Ben Fisher. I'm with thehostingnews.com, and I'm here at HostingCon 2014. And we're here today talking with Hillary Stiff from Cheval Capital. How are you doing, Hillary?
Hi, Ben. It's great to see you.
Definitely great to see you. You and I have been around the industry for a long time, but your story really hasn't been told. And you haven't been able to really get to talk to people who are up and coming in the industry. So what we've got for you today is we've got a little bit of background on Cheval Capital and a little bit of something that we're just calling kind of like running your company as if. How did you get into the industry? I think you started back in '97 actually with Vario, right? So how did you kind of grow from there into the hosting industry where you are now, where you've completed over 250 transactions just to date in the hosting or hosting related industry? Give us the scoop.
Well, first of all, Ben, I think you may have called me a dinosaur of the hosting industry, but that's probably accurate. As you mentioned, we got started in 1997 with Vario. We were helping them on their East Coast ISP acquisitions. From that, it really morphed into doing essentially shared hosting at that time. They really weren't dedicated hosters. And we worked for Vario for probably about 4 or 5 years doing consolidation of hosting, ending with a 1999 acquisition of Digital Nation, which was a high watermark in the industry at that point. Went for $100 million, and at that point it had about $10 million of revenue. So that's approximately, depending on how you evaluate it, about a 10 to 12 times revenue multiple. So things have certainly changed in the last 10 years.
Just a little bit. Yeah, we don't see those every day now.
No. So once we finished helping them on their buy-side deals, we started working for Endurance, and we helped them complete, I don't know, somewhere probably just south of 20 acquisitions. And it was interesting, as we worked for companies working on buy-side programs, a lot of times they're private equity backed. What would happen is we'd find all these companies that were wonderful companies that didn't fit the specific requirements of the group that we were working for. And probably about 10 years ago, I think it was around the time of the first hosting con in Chicago, we came up with the idea, why don't we take all these individual companies that we're seeing that aren't a fit for our particular buyer, why don't we put them on a list and we'll send them out? And as I said, that was 10 years ago, and since that point, I think we've now done about 260 hosting deals in the last too many years to count.
Being that you've been doing this for in excess of 10 years, what is your take on the industry now?
I think we love the people in the industry, and as you mentioned, it's very interesting because I can't think of another industry where you have so many people that started with an unorthodox business background. They weren't in a management program, they didn't start off as a salesperson for a company. A lot of them, as you mentioned, out of their dorm room or maybe sometimes even their basement, had a love for computers, and they created a business out of that. So it's been tremendous to work with these people, these young entrepreneurs with so much energy. And I think probably the major difference that we've seen is maturation of the industry during that time period. You can run a good company now and still have flat revenues, and it's just we're in a different industry, not a different industry, we're in a different market than we used.
Right, the marketplace has changed.
But remember, it's still an attractive business. I mean, just because it doesn't have the characteristics that it used to have 10 or 12 years ago, but the cash flow from these businesses are tremendous, and the opportunities to continue to sell them additional products to customers to help solve issues and help them grow and do their, whatever, if they're selling pocketbooks or if it's a restaurant or if it's a hotel, there's still tremendous ways that you can help that customer, and it's still a good business. The cash flow is tremendous. It's just a bit of it has different characteristics than it once did.
Yeah, I'm totally agree, 100%.
What would you say your most interesting deal?
Well, the big ones are always fun, and some of the big ones had a lot of drama. I think I mentioned to you before, we did the Digital Nation deal at the end of the 90s, and that was the first $100 million deal in the hosting space. At that time, I think the revenues were about $10 million, so it was over a 10 times revenue multiple. Well, unfortunately, revenue multiples have certainly come down a bit since then. iPowerWeb with Endurance was a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of those companies are ones that we stalked for years before we finally got them done. So it was very rewarding when they finally closed. But you know, to be honest with you, sometimes the most rewarding are the ones that we're adding the most value. And it may be a situation that you had a young entrepreneur that has really created a special company, and when you see that they're able to cash out for something that they created, which is really above the standard, that's a great feeling. We've had situations where there's been a death of, unfortunately, the hoster, and the estate needs to sell the business. So there's some that aren't particularly remarkable. Maybe, you know, it goes by without the rest of the world even knowing it happened, but those can be very, very fulfilling.
Even if the end goal is not to sell, that one of the things they can do is they can talk to you just to learn a little bit more to how better effectively run their business.
We've been in the business, as you mentioned in the beginning, since the late 90s. There are so many hosters out there we've never done a transaction with. We love to talk to and keep up to date, and we've been talking to them for 10, 15 years. We are always happy to give back to this industry. It's been such a terrific industry, and we'll always sit down with people and talk to them about what we've seen work before in terms of tracking metrics and what may be important for their business. And as you said before, this may be a I'm thinking about selling in 2 years question, or it may be I just need to run this business a little bit more professionally than I have in the past, and kind of upgrade from a decision-making perspective and to really understand fundamentally what's occurring with your business.
What are your top 5 tips for running a successful business and to prepare to basically run it as if?
When you create these businesses, you really want to think about what is this going to look like in 5 or 10 years down the road? And I need to do things the right way today so I can build the foundations of this business. And so it really is critical to think, okay, well, when I have 15 customers, maybe I can just keep them all in an Excel spreadsheet. But that's not going to work when you have 15,000 customers. And so you always need to think about where you're driving this business and how to prepare for that. So I think, you know, number one on my list is think long term and think about this company being a large company. I think number two that we've also touched on, this is more of a recap or summary, is what you need to provide the customers. You need to provide products and services to the customers so they can grow. And if you're doing that correctly, then your business will you'll take care of your business. The other point 3 is probably you need to get systems in place so that you can track all the important aspects. And that's probably your revenue growth, that's your EBITDA growth, that's the customers you're adding, the customers you're churning, the customers you're losing. Number 4 is probably we see so much emphasis put on growth, which is terrific and critical, but it's a lot cheaper to keep a customer from going out the back door than it is to add a new customer. So we really are hoping to see hosters put a lot of emphasis into understanding why they're losing these customers and what they can do to keep the customers. And I think 5th is, as we've also talked about, is the world's changing and you need to continue to evolve. You don't necessarily have to have more money than anybody else. You just need to work smart and understand where the customers are going and continue to evolve your business so you can keep up with what your customers need. And then I think, as I said before, the fundamentals of this business are extremely attractive. If you follow those 5 tips, you're going to have a nice business regardless if you're keeping it forever or selling it next year.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Hillary. So everybody, this has been Hillary Stipp with Cheval Capital. And Hillary, if you could tell us, how can people find you?
We're at chevalcapital.com, ChevalCapital, email, telephone, our website, Google, we're out there.
This is Ben Fisher with the Hosting News and Steady Demand. And everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching.